My abstract math final is tomorrow, and it's cumulative. So I thought I'd really briefly talk about, in my usual fashion, how I plan on studying for it, and very briefly mention like the kind of stuff it covers. Oh god, that is so blown out. Mucho better. So, wow. Alright, so it is cumulative, so it covers everything from those really basic proofs that I've mentioned before, all the way up to indirect proof methods and proof by induction. Obviously, all of this includes set notation, so how to write for every, or there exists, or there does not exist, or there exists a unique answer. All of that stuff is relevant. It doesn't take much to remember that stuff. I've written it so many times that generally I don't even have to think about it. Something that is a little bit new is these abbreviations for the different types of numbers, or the different sets of numbers, I should say. So like Z for the integers, Q for the rationals, R for the reals, and the difference between those and what contains what. So you can see I've written the hierarchy here. That N is a subset of Z, is a subset of Q, is a subset of R. So the natural numbers belong to the integers, belong to the rational numbers, belong to the reals. Will my exam be that specific? Yeah, probably not, but it doesn't hurt to know. And if algebra is the foundation for concrete math up to this point, including calculus, then I would say this is the foundation for all abstract math. Set notation, proofs, indirect proofs, basic number theory, I would say. So in the first week of class, I had a worksheet on pigeonhole principle, which you may or may not have watched the video on that. It's kind of interesting once you figure out how it works and what it means. But when you're trying to teach it to yourself, which was my case, it can be a little bit irritating. And then this week, I got countability, and I got really brief lecture on both of those yesterday. And I don't know to what extent they're going to be on the exam. Hopefully not too much, because my exam length is the same as all my other ones, which is a max of 2 hours and 20 minutes. And hopefully he's not going to focus on something which technically weren't even part of my course. As far as indirect proof methods go, counterexample is a pretty obvious one, and it's usually pretty obvious when you should use it or attempt to use it. But contrapositive and contradiction are really easy to get confused. I'm speaking from experience. Doing the homework, I was like, yeah, it's really easy to distinguish these things, and it's like, no, maybe not. I would end up using a little bit of both, and it's just they're really easy to get confused, and you just have to know what you're doing and be careful all the time. So I'm definitely gonna make a point to remember the difference between those two and how to do them, obviously. Induction is kind of a hassle too, especially since you can't do them all the same way. If you're dealing with inequalities, you can make some kind of substitutions to cancel things out, as long as you can substantiate those claims. And I'll include several of those in my video this weekend, where I do a bunch more proofs. That'll include a lot of these indirect proof methods. And if you're doing proof by induction for equalities, then you just have to do straight algebra to factor things out or compress them, and do some associativity and distributivity and all of that stuff to reorganize things and group them and stuff like that. And if you're doing induction for summations, well, that's just a whole other animal. That's kind of what I have written over here, the fact that you have to split it up into two sides, and to one side you have to do something, and the other side you have to do something else, and then you have to show that they're equal in some form or another, kind of similar to equalities, but you have to manipulate the two sides differently to reflect that it works for k plus 1 as well as k. That's a whole other thing. I'm probably going to practice a handful of these, but I've already done all the homework, and I've spent so much time on them that if I look at one of them, I'm probably going to remember how I did it. So I may try and find some off the internet. Otherwise, I'm just going to briefly go over this stuff. I'm probably going to spend a lot of time on countability, just because it's still kind of vague to me. I kind of get the gist of it, but not confident enough to take a test on it right now. And it's also probably going to come up in a later class, probably abstract algebra in 2.5 weeks. So it's relative. It's or not relative, but relevant. And that's more or less it. So my next video, like I said, will be on proofs. I got a whole bunch to do, probably a dozen or more, so I may just literally do an hour of proofs. And that'll be anywhere from really basic stuff to indirect proof methods and complicated proof by inductions with summations and things like that. And then after tomorrow afternoon, I'm home free for 2 weeks. I mean, I'll probably be working those 2 weeks, but you get the idea. So hopefully this was helpful or at least interesting to you. If you have specific questions about what my test covers or what some of these things mean, then I could potentially make an additional follow-on video to those things. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.